Writer-director Lowell Dean, who previously brought us Wolf Cop, brings us Dark Match. And this one stars Alicia Ishtar, Chris Jericho, Stephen Ogg and Michael Eklund. And this is a kind of horror wrestling movie, to put it lightly, and is totally made for fans of both horror and wrestling. If you like both of those things, there'll be a lot to enjoy here. So the movie takes place in the 1980s, and we have a kind of low-rent local wrestling circuit that is kind of barely scraping by, and the movie actually focuses on the heels, which are kind of the bad guys in that play bad guys, at least in the kind of the wrestling sort of storylines. And this wrestling company gets offered a bunch of money to go and perform at a particular kind of rural location, and they go there, and you know, it's some sort of strange kind of setup and a few kind of like interesting sounding matches, and the organizer appears to have some kind of other motivations, and the organizer is played by actual wrestler Chris Jericho. And as the film goes on, we learn that he might actually have satanic reasons for doing what he's doing, and these matches are anything but fake and could end in deadly fashion. And as our wrestlers face off, they are literally fighting for their lives. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So as I say, I think this, if you are a fan of actual kind of professional wrestling, is a lot to enjoy here, because there's a lot of kind of references to that business. So if you are a fan of the business in the sense of, you know, how it operates, you know, and a lot of the kind of the terminology and you know, things that they have to do, like kayfabe, you know, no sales, things like this, you'll kind of pick up on a lot of the kind of nuances here. And the whole idea here is that this is taking place in the kind of the Satanic Panic era, and at this point, you know, wrestling was, some people were suspecting it was fake, but kind of it wasn't as kind of well known as it is now, perhaps. And the whole idea here is that this is not fake. They are actually fighting for real and to the death in a variety of kind of themed matches, and with the ultimate goal of actually kind of summoning the devil, if obviously things go in Chris Jericho's favour. So there's a lot of kind of like, as I say, terminology and references that are, if you are a fan of the business of professional wrestling, you'll thoroughly kind of enjoy. In particular, obviously, because we have some actual kind of wrestling talent on screen here as well. In regards to the horror, it's kind of, you know, these are locals kind of who are into the sort of occult practices. So in some ways, it's kind of like a backwoods folk horror in a way, that we have these crazy locals who have, you know, demonic sights in their kind of, you know, in their view and things like this. They want to kind of raise the devil. I mean, how serious are they in it and everything like that? The movie actually has some fairly good kind of gore sequences here. And I think the story's actually kind of quite interesting as well, because, you know, we are focused as our protagonists are actually the kind of the bad guys, as I say, or heels as they're known in the industry. And it focuses on a kind of this group of them, and they're fighting for their lives, whilst the faces, the good guys, are tending to be the ones that are fighting for this demonic wrestling promotion. So there is some kind of fun sequences, and you don't quite know where the story is going. I have to say, it's quite a fun little kind of setup, and who's involved, who's not, what's the ultimate goal, is there even multiple goals from these people? Are some more interested in kind of financial gain, whilst others are more interested in the actual kind of ritualistic and kind of satanic kind of reasons for doing what they're doing? So there's actually quite a lot kind of going on in regards to those elements. And I think if you are a fan of both the wrestling side and the horror side, then you'll get double the enjoyment out of this, because I do think it really actually succeeds for the most part in regards to having a fairly kind of engaging storyline with engaging characters. And wrestling is pretty much, it's really hung its hat on telling stories. And that's the whole reason why it's been so successful, is because it's like a soap opera, and this movie kind of still uses that same method, but obviously having it in a much more fantastical kind of setting to a degree. So that was all quite good. And I gotta say, I thought the acting was kind of solid. Everyone here is kind of like character actors. You know, Stephen Ogg, Michael Eklund, and Jericho's been in a few things here and there. So there is some kind of like decent sort of performances and a kind of somewhat heightened reality. But everyone here is very personable, and there's some kind of quite good, you know, preamble until the actual kind of violence starts about making you kind of feel uneasy, and there's something kind of not quite right, but you can't quite put your finger on what actually is going on here. The fight sequences are actually kind of quite fun and feel kind of brutal, and you do feel kind of sorry for some of these people involved in these matches, because they do look very painful, and practical kind of gore is used for the most part in regards to the sort of the effects and the blood and guts and everything like that. So I thought it was all pretty enjoyable. Is there any things that could have maybe take away from this? I would say two things. First, the cinematography is a little dark. Now, ironically, this movie is called, obviously, Dark Match, which refers to a match which isn't televised. Again, that's kind of that wrestling lingo, but the actual cinematography is a little dark sometimes, and sometimes it looks very murky through the whole film. And I get that it's supposed to be this kind of out of the way, kind of grungy sort of you know, wrestling promotion in this kind of rural town, but nonetheless, it's not exactly what you'd call well lit. So as such, the whole kind of visual sort of medium, it always feels a little kind of like brown and dull at times, and sometimes it's a little kind of hard to see what's kind of going on. The only other thing I would say story wise is it's not exactly clear about who's involved, why would certain people be involved, and what motivations would they have for being there, because it doesn't make it entirely clear about what certain, you know, who's exactly explicitly involved, who's partially involved. It never really gives you clear ideas about, you know, who knows what and what their reasons are for being there. Also, the kind of the fact that this whole town seems to be on it, again, not a huge amount of information in regards to that. Now, as another point I would say is that the ending, I would say, would be quite divisive. I actually kind of quite liked it, and I think most people will like it to a point, but you may feel a little frustrated with the very final conclusion of this movie. It's something that is clearly done on purpose, and as I say, I quite enjoyed it, so it's not really a critique for me, but I can imagine that there will be people out there who would find the way it ends a little frustrating. So, how to rate this movie? I actually enjoyed this movie a lot, and I would kind of recommend it. In particular, as I say, if you're a fan of both wrestling and horror, then I think this is really a winner. And it's probably, I have to say, probably my favourite wrestling style horror movie, which there's not been loads admittedly, but there is a handful out there. I want to give it a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.